Welcome to Recruit, Hire, Lead to Retain. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon to those on the East Coast. I am your host, Deborah Reynolds, owner of About Face Image Consulting, business and leadership coach, image mindset, and transformation expert. My co host is recruiting and hiring expert and owner of Best Culture Solutions, Tim Dick. Welcome, Tim.
Good morning and or afternoon if you're on the East Coast. It's good. I feel like it's been 4 weeks since we did this together, maybe a little bit more, and I am happy to be back. So good to see you.
And good to see you. It is. It's funny how we get out of touch, and then all
Mm,
that time passes by. Listen, we have a really great topic here to talk about that I
yes.
think is a really timely topic.
Hmm.
And it is around fear in the hiring process and in the workplace. And so the fear component is on two elements. It could be on the business owner side, the recruiting expert side, and the hiring expert and HR team of going through the hiring process and not getting the right person and expending a
Right.
lot of time and energy. But the fear can also be it's on the side of the employee, the prospective employee coming in and wanting to get the promotion, wanting to get hired, not being enough, not being worthy, and afraid to speak up. So let's have a conversation about this. What are you
Sure.
noticing, Tim, in the workplace environment? Well, particularly as you're approaching business owners that are wanting to hire you to do the recruiting, what are some of
Mhm.
their major concerns and fears?
The biggest from the employer side, the biggest fear I find is they want somebody and they want somebody good. They're worried about what's going to happen with their business if they can't do that. Um, what they're probably selfishly, and there's nothing wrong with this. I say selfishly just because it affects them personally, but there's nothing wrong with this. They're worried about their own personal workload, right, and how busy they are and how they can't stay that busy and it be sustainable. But a lot of times they're worried that they're not going to find the right person. I mean, that's the biggest thing, and a lot of times that leads to fear um, to look specifically with somebody with a specific type of experience that may or may not actually be relevant or actually be a real true indicator of whether or not that person is going to be the right person for the role. But there's just a lot of overwhelming fear because it's a lot of work, right, to go out to market to try to find somebody, and that's overwhelm. And then there's fear and worry about finding the right person, I find.
Yeah, and I would agree that when I'm talking to business owners and in knowing where where they should be hiring first, what position they should be covering, what responsibilities should they be delegating and releasing and letting go of, that is a big issue for business owners. And then making sure they get that right person in there that can get up to speed really quickly and then start to execute really quickly and get results for them.
Exactly. Yeah. What do you
Yeah,
think?
so, some of the issues that I'm coming across with people wanting to be hired in organizations is that fear of not having the right resume and not having their actual
Right.
accomplishments expressed in the right way. So, hiring somebody like you who knows how to really navigate that whole resume process is really important. My approach is to work on the mindset piece and build their confidence and their self esteem and to have them really acknowledge what it is that they've done and to be able to speak about it, to bring it
Mhm.
forward.
Yeah, you're so right. And from a job seeker perspective, there's a lot of that. And I think what it really, the one common trend or trait that I see in people that are experiencing this is that they're worried about coming off as bragging or they don't want to be immodest, things like that. And so they trump down or they tone down, some of what they could say or the power of their own accomplishments because they're worried about being too, out there. And that's too bad because really it's not about bragging at the end of the day. It's not about um, it's not about uh, being immodest or putting on your cape and looking like a hero. If you take to me, the real thing or the real trick is that people need to adopt a mindset where they acknowledge and understand that that's not what they're doing, right? They're not bragging. They're not pumping their tires disproportionately anyway. All they're really trying to do is humbly share with people how they've helped people with the past, help people, sorry, in the past and how they can help you in the future. And that's all you're trying to do is just, you could go full brag if you want to, and I'm so great and I did this. Don't do that. But if you can use your accomplishments to point out how you've helped people in the past, so you can illustrate a picture of how you can help people in the future, what's wrong with that? I don't think anything.
Yeah, I would agree with you. There is nothing wrong with that. And I think we get caught up in this definition of bragging because we've been told as kids, and our parents and elders have said to us, don't be bragging, don't be boastful.
Hmm.
You're a little too brazen, tone it down a little bit.
Yeah.
And so people have this mindset, they're gaining this mindset at a very young age that is perpetuated and reinforced, that they're not enough, that they're not worthy, that they're not deserving, that they shouldn't have these really exceptional opportunities in front of them. And so they hold themselves back, they stifle, they are refusing to speak up. I was talking to a director in a company recently who,
Mhm.
they have well over 700 employees in their company, and one of the common problems that they have is employees are complaining, I didn't get that opportunity for that promotion. And the big
Mm.
issue is they didn't speak up. They didn't actually let their supervisors or managers know, or even in the performance evaluation process, that they wanted these opportunities. These were their specific goals that they were trying to achieve and work towards in the company. And they weren't asking for specific opportunities that could develop their skill sets to move them into that higher level position, to
Hmm.
really present themselves as the best candidate. So that's a big issue as well.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with asking. I mean, you're not asking to get something for nothing here. You're asking to make a contribution, right? And there's two types of people I find, or two different approaches where people ask for opportunities. I've seen people that say, "Hey, I just want this job." That's great, but why, right? And if you can articulate that you want it for a reason that is contributing to something, or you want to make a contribution, then that's very different, right? And there's nothing wrong with wanting to make a contribution like that, like nothing in the least. Um, so people should not be shy if they see something that they have their eyes on or that they want to do. I mean, so long as their intentions are genuine, right? They genuinely want to do it. They're genuinely curious about the job. They're genuinely interested in the business or what they do, and they genuinely believe that they can make a contribution. Then they should not be shy about that.
Yeah, you're right about that. And that word contribution is a really important word because
Mhm.
people have to know that whatever gifts and talents that they've developed, they were usually developed under circumstances, whether in the current company that they're in previous companies. So now it is how they're adding value. So that contribution piece is really critical. And having the conversation that is very much in line with corporate vision, corporate mission, the values of the company. So they need to have an understanding of that to know this is how I can best contribute and add value. This is how I can bring team together and collaborate so that we can move through projects and anything that's going on in the company at a much faster pace and getting greater efficiency and effectiveness and as a result of that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And you've hit the nail on the head. Like the word is contribute, right? One thing I always tell people, when it comes to networking, if there's an organization that you maybe want to be a part of, or something like that, what you need to do is not reach out to people and say, "Hey, I want this job. Can you get me the job?" Right? Or can you put in a good word for me? Well, that's nice. You haven't outlined to people what you're going to plan to contribute, right? You haven't outlined to people how you can contribute. So, I've always told people that if you're networking with people in an organization that you'd like to be part of one day, what you really should be saying is you should just be asking for advice. You know, I would really like to go to this organization one day because I believe in what they do and I think I can contribute to that. What advice do you have for me? And then follow through on that advice and let those people know that you've talked to, that you have. And it really will set you apart from other people that come and ask these types of questions. And the other thing that it will do is it'll create genuine relationships with people as well.
Yeah, beautiful. And those relationships are so critical, right? That
Hmm.
they actually open doors up much more quickly and help you navigate through where you need to go. Yesterday I attended a conference for women in the Kelowna area.
Okay.
And the speaking topic was predominantly around the I Am Remarkable movement.
Mm.
By Google's movement for that was spearheaded by this lovely woman in Israel. And what I wanted to share about that was one of the exercises that the audience had an opportunity to participate in was to talk about I am personally remarkable because of this,
Mm.
because I am also professionally remarkable because of this, and
Right.
so really acknowledging for themselves what they've done personally that makes them really unique and incredible and why they're remarkable. And they actually not only had to write it down, we had to speak it out loud and talk
Huh.
about it with the audience. But it was incredible some of the things that people shared. We have greater insights into who people really are on a deep core authentic level when they're willing to share. So how are you bringing that out in the resume process?
Yeah, that's a great question. What the really big important thing to do is in your resume process is, and I see people do this all the time, lots of people will write a resume and under each job, they'll just kind of list the responsibilities that they've had, right? Or they'll just list, it looks like a job description, not a resume, right? And what you can really do if you want to point out how remarkable you are on a resume, and you absolutely should, the biggest thing that you can do is instead of listing responsibilities, list your accomplishments, if that makes sense. List what your accomplishments were in that role, and specifically what you accomplished around those responsibilities. So, I could, for instance, I used to manage and lead large teams. So I could, all day long put managed and led a large team on my resume and just had it like a job description would. Or I could say, or I can say the same thing, but phrase it like an accomplishment. So what I would do with that is I would say, I coached and guided a team of 25 to 40 people that were responsible for a 24/7 operation of 600 drivers or logistics people. And that is a lot more impactful than just saying I managed and led a team, right? So in your resume, the best and biggest lever that you can pull when it comes to using accomplishment based language is to say everything in there needs to be an accomplishment, if that makes sense. List it as an accomplishment. Use numbers in that accomplishment because the human mind needs numbers to process what you've told them, and it helps the visualization process. When you start to use numbers in your resume, the reader of the resume can actually start envisioning you in that actual role, and that's the biggest thing. Those two things are the biggest things that you can do really, to show how you can contribute in a way that stands out and is accomplishment focused.
Yeah, beautiful. That's a perfect example. And to add to that as well, those accomplishments, the numbers component, which I loved what you were sharing, the
Hmm.
numbers, the stats, the statistics, the difference. So from where you are now to where you want to be or where you're taking that group. So there's a difference and there's a gap. So when you are expressing the accomplishments, making sure that you're expressing how much of a difference and how much of an increase or a process was developed so that that result is very tangible. People can see it, feel it. They really know and understand clearly what that result is at the end of the day for that accomplishment. I think it's really important that we do that.
Exactly. Agreed. Yeah, agreed. Um, so let's go back. So when you were in that session and you had to stand up and talk about what made you remarkable, what was your first instinct when you knew you had to do that?
You know, so my tagline in my business is getting you noticed, known, and remembered for all
Yeah.
the right reasons, not the wrong reasons. And for over 3 decades, that is where my focus and attention has been in my business to help people get noticed. And when I started my business as an image consultant, grooming them from the external point of view, I was also very much aware that the grooming and the development and the transformation needs to happen internally. There
Yeah.
needs to be the mindset piece. So people
That's
can
right.
look confident on the outside, but if they're not confident on the inside, they are not feeling that they are accomplished, that they are capable, and that is not expressed in their language and how they communicate with people outwardly, then all those elements, they're not very congruent, they're not coming together, and so it becomes not believable to
Mm.
anybody that's observing another person. So they can have the great suit, but if the language isn't there to say, yes, I'm remarkable because of these things, we see a lack of congruency, and therefore the person is not believable, and we begin to feel a little uncomfortable that we're thinking this person is not very authentic.
Yeah.
So when I was talking about the personal accomplishments, I was talking about the aspect of allowing other people to be heard in the process, which included having and being the voice of my father when he was diagnosed with cancer, in
Mm.
ensuring that his wishes were expressed to the doctors. And so, even though he was not, physically capable of talking and communicating and navigating through the whole emotional process of cancer, I was his voice. And that became
Hmm.
very important. Is that
Huh.
I think whether you're in business or whether you're dealing with people personally, you have to allow people to be heard. And so sometimes you need to be very present, very aware, seeing who's around you, who is not capable of even having a voice in that moment, and being able to step up to support that person to be heard. So the idea of getting noticed, known, and remembered, of being visible, of being heard, happens as much in the personal environment of your life as it does in the workplace environment. So while we are talking here today about the fear element of not being visible and not being heard or acknowledged for our accomplishments in a workplace environment, the issue too is a very internal process. As a human being, where is it that we're not being heard elsewhere in our lives, but where is it that we're not allowing other people to be heard? Where do we cut people off? Where do we stop them from really fully expressing their point of view or their opinion? So that can happen at home, it can happen in the workplace environment. And listen, the idea of having the voice, being the voice for my father because I loved him, was
Hmm.
very important for me when I years later got diagnosed with chronic lymphocytic leukemia, is
Hmm.
that I was able to speak up for myself with physicians and doctors to insist and demand that I was well taken care of, and to ensure the family members as well were supporting me in that process and making sure my wishes were acknowledged. Because if we don't speak up for ourselves, there are probably very few people out of integrity and character that will allow us to speak up. So we have to have that willingness to take that risk to speak up and to really stand our ground in that process. And that comes with a great deal of inner confidence and being able to manage our emotions to ensure that we are communicating in a way that we are actually heard and understood.
Hmm. So, did you find that that became instantly easier to do once you felt like you probably had no choice, right?
It is usually it's trauma, a
Yeah.
lot of major challenges or trauma or crises that create some sort of inner transformation where we go, I have no choice. I've got to do this now. And so this comes right back to our sense of worthiness, our sense of self and value, is that I want to live, that I find this other human being, my father, he's worthy of living, and I want to help save his life. And so if I wasn't vocal in that process, there would have been, we wouldn't have had the outcome that we would have, which was finding a cure for his cancer. I
Right.
mean, those things become really relevant in life. Many years ago, my nephew had a crush injury on his hand. And if I wasn't more vocal with the doctors and ensuring that he was well taken care of in the process and following through on my own instincts on that, he might have lost his hand. It might have been amputated.
Mm.
So, I would think it's to do usually with major trauma, major crises that happen, that your back's against the wall, and then at some point you're going to come out swinging. So,
Yeah. Well, what's funny that comes to mind too is that I often find that, so when I teach customer service, right? I mean, the old and tired cliche would always be to do unto others as you'd have them do to yourself. I don't believe in that. Well, I do, but here's where I would go with it with next level. I believe more strongly that when you're thinking about how to treat others and how to talk to others, the standard should not be yourself. The standard should be how you would want people to treat those that you love, your mom, your dad, your kids, your nephews, your nieces, your grandparents. Because we are willing, if somebody slights us in some way, we're willing to say, That's okay," and kind of get over it because we don't want to cause a scene. But if somebody slights somebody that we care about, that we love in our family, our our um, our tolerance for that is a lot less, right? And so, one of the things that really strikes me about the story is that you found your voice, right, quite a bit when you were having to care for somebody that you cared about. And I wonder if just that mentality and that mindset helped that. And then in turn, when you needed it for yourself, you had that practice, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
And the practice element is sometimes a really critical part of the process. But I do love what you shared there, because if we are willing to self-sacrifice ourselves for somebody
Hmm.
else that we love, we will, put aside our own needs for the moment and really fight for somebody else. And when you shared that, oh, Tim, it reminded me of many years ago when I was working for the government. My best friend was applying for the same position that I was for a promotion. And I really wanted this position. But when I heard that she was applying for it too, I actually withdrew, because I wanted her to get it. And some people could have said, well, it could have been either one of you that you would have been able to benefit one or the other if, whoever would have won. But you know what? I didn't want to compete against her. And I knew she would have been superb in the job, and she was. So, and it wasn't that I was diminishing myself. I just really had a great deal of love and respect for her that I wasn't going to compete against her. And, who knows what would have happened today? I think I would have done exactly the same thing, because I have the perspective that there's always going to be other opportunities that are going to be available. If I've missed this one opportunity, I know that there's going to be something else coming around. In the same sort of organization, I denied myself an opportunity to actually apply for a promotion when a manager came to me and said, "You'd be really great at this and apply for this." I actually stopped myself, because what came out of my mouth, which I hear right across the board now in my 30 years of business plus in business here, is I hear it a lot from senior directors and managers, particularly women, is I don't think I know enough and I don't have enough experience, and therefore I'm not going to apply for the position. I stopped myself, and I didn't end up getting the promotion that would have been just incredible for my career. So I see that a lot, is that a lot of people hold themselves back because they may not necessarily be in competition with somebody else. Ultimately, for a position, we usually are within organizations, but usually not with a best friend. But
Yeah.
I think when we're denying ourselves that opportunity to stretch and grow, that becomes a problem. We need to acknowledge that, and we need to address it, because we are missing out on those critical opportunities that are really going to help shape and grow us so that we can contribute even more to our own lives and to companies and organizations.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, we really limit ourselves, right, when we do that, and we don't do it consciously thinking that we're limiting ourselves. That's the dangerous part about it. And I think too, a lot of times we limit ourselves because, like you say, you want to give something to somebody else, or um, when I think about when you don't go for that job because somebody else may have wanted it, and okay, I'll let them do it and all that stuff. You're not. I mean, the one way to look at it is that you're limiting yourself. But if you were to finish that whole statement, it's not just about you and a selfish limiting of yourself. You're limiting yourself and how much you can provide to others, or how much you can contribute to others, or how much you can solve a problem. It's not just about you, like our mind lets us think it is. You have a light that you're not letting shine when you do that, and you're not making it clear to people how you can help them.
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
that is really an important, an issue that people need to look at, is that Other people are denied the opportunity to excel, to grow, to transform, to change, and to even to contribute themselves because we hold ourselves back and don't give them that opportunity. So, there's one other point here that I really wanted to share that becomes a big issue. And this has to do with organizations not being fully transparent about salaries. And so
Mm,
we have women, getting lesser salaries than men. And a lot of countries, a lot of states in the US, provinces in Canada don't have the legislation in place to insist that salaries be transparent. So that is another way that people are being stifled and being held down and held back because we don't know what to anticipate in terms of a salary when we're in the process of negotiating. And because we're being held back, that reinforces that concept, that idea of not being enough, not being worthy, not being deserving.
yeah, I agree. And I think too, like, not including salary ranges is actually an employer's detriment. And the reason why I think that is because, you know, how do I put this? I mean, at the end of the day, like, you're not going to attract, you increase the likelihood of attracting the right kind of candidate if you're upfront and transparent about your salary. Um, you might not get as many candidates. You might get more candidates. It can go both ways. But generally, you get more of the right candidate if you're not, if you're transparent with what your salary level is. And I can't recommend it enough to people that, and we recommend all the time with our clients, if we're going to be recruiting for you, that we're upfront and transparent about your compensation levels, because again, it increases the likelihood of success in the recruiting process.
I absolutely agree with that. The
Mm,
idea of the perception of authenticity of an organization being viewed as being trustworthy
yeah,
starts with that process as well too, about
agreed.
what they can expect in that workplace environment in terms of the position and all the benefits that go along with it, in terms of what other opportunities are available to them. But if you're lying, if you're hiding, if you're creating an environment, a culture of deception where many things are hidden, including the salary component, everybody is cheated in that process.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
couldn't have said it better myself.
So, any final words you want to share there, Tim?
The biggest thing I would say, Deb, is just encourage people. Don't be afraid to share with people how you've accomplished things in the past, and just have that mindset and that approach that you're not bragging. All you're doing is you're sharing with people how you've helped solve problems in the past and making it clear to people how you can help solve problems in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you
Yeah.
very much. I appreciate that. And to our audience, one of the great exercises that you could do is write down personally all the remarkable things that you've accomplished and you've achieved
Mm,
in your life, and to keep a record of that. Over the years, coaching and working with business owners and leaders, what I have found was that in those days that we feel inadequate, diminished, overwhelmed, not good enough, by being able to pull out that list of accomplishments is a great way of reinforcing, wow, look what I've done in the past. And we forget in the moment when we're overwhelmed that we've actually done extraordinary things, and we've accomplished amazing things in our life, and overcome some major challenges. So it just reinforces that, hey, if I've done that, I could certainly do this. And then again, writing out a list of those accomplishments and achievements in the workplace environment, the current workplace that you're in, previous workplace environments, tie it all together as a great, a really beautiful bow that you can unpackage and unpack into a really great resume, and to be able to present that in the right way. But I think it's really important for organizations to do that, of what they've done internally for their staff, what they're doing in terms of for clients, vendors, suppliers, their community, how they're contributing and creating an extraordinary difference. They need to acknowledge that in the process. So thank you, Tim, for joining us
thank
today.
you.
And to our audience, we will see you again for another segment of Recruit, Hire, and Lead to Retain. Thank you.